The Bodhisattva of Avalokiteshvara addressed the Buddha and said, World-honored one, why is the first stage termed the stage of utmost joy? Why are the other stages termed what they are termed? The Buddha answered the Bodhisattva of Avalokiteshvara and said, Good son, the first stage is termed the stage of utmost joy because in accomplishing great meaning and attaining a transcendent mind not hitherto attained in the world, one engenders great delight and joy. The second stage is termed the stage of purification because in it one removes all subtle transgressions against discipline. The third stage is termed the stage of expanding light because the concentrations and memory formulas attained in it are able to be the support for unlimited wisdom light. The fourth stage is termed the stage of flaming wisdom because the factors of wisdom attained in it burn away all passion, and wisdom flares up like fire. The fifth stage is termed the stage of invincibility because when in it one attains mastery in the cultivation of skillful methods over those same factors of wisdom which are most difficult to overcome. The sixth stage is termed the stage of presence because when in it one brings to presence and examines all the evolutions of conditioned states of being and abides in their presence by the continual cultivation of reflection upon the imageless. The seventh stage is termed the far-reaching stage because when in it one is able to enter into an imageless and far-reaching reflection without defect and without interruption, and thus one draws near to images of pure lands. The eighth stage is termed the unshakable stage because when in it one attains spontaneity in regard to the imageless and does not evince any movement of passion in regard to images. The ninth stage is termed the stage of wisdom discernment because in it one obtains irreproachable and expansive wisdom which understands and masters all doctrinal enunciations. The 10th stage is termed the stage of the doctrine or Dharma cloud because in it, just as a great cloud is able to cover over the sky, this mass of weakness, that is, the receptacle consciousness, is encompassed by the Dharma body. The 11th stage is termed the Buddha stage because in it one is forever freed from the obstacle of even the subtlest passion and from the obstacle to the knowable, in supreme awakening to all knowable realms. The Bodhisattva of Avalokiteshvara addressed the Buddha and said, World-honored one, in the 10 stages, how many delusions and how many weaknesses to be counteracted are found? The Buddha answered the Bodhisattva of Avalokiteshvara and said, Good son, in these stages there are 22 delusions and 12 kinds of weakness to be counteracted. In the first stage there are 2 delusions, the delusion of clinging to personality and to things, and the delusion of being defiled in evil destinies. These, together with the weakness resulting from them, are what has to be counteracted by this first stage. In the second stage, there are 2 delusions, the delusion of subtle mistakes and the delusion of destinies resulting from various actions. These, together with the weakness that issues from them, are what are to be counteracted by this second stage. In the third stage, there are 2 delusions, the delusion of being covetous of sense objects and the delusion in regard to perfecting the memory of what is heard. These, together with the weakness that issues from them, are what are to be counteracted by this third stage. In the fourth stage, there are 2 delusions, the delusion of being attached to concentration and the delusion of being attached to doctrine. These, together with the weakness that issues from them, are what are to be counteracted by this fourth stage. In the fifth stage, there are 2 delusions, the delusion of an exclusive focus in rejecting transmigration, and the delusion of an exclusive focus in aiming at cessation. These, together with the weakness that issues from them, are what are to be counteracted by this fifth stage. In the sixth stage, there are 2 delusions, the delusion of bringing to presence and examining the evolutions of conditioned states of being as defiled, and the delusion in frequently bringing to presence images as purified. These, together with the weakness that issues from them, are what are to be counteracted by this sixth stage. In the seventh stage there are two delusions: the delusion of bringing to presence subtle images of conditioned states, and the delusion of teaching by the method of focusing exclusively upon the imageless. These, together with the weakness that issues from them, are what are to be counteracted by the seventh stage. In the eighth stage there are two delusions: the delusion of exerting effort in regard to the imageless, and the delusion in regard to mastering images. These, together with the weakness that issues from them, are what are to be counteracted by this eighth stage. In the ninth stage there are two delusions: the delusion that one has mastered the unlimited doctrinal explanations, the unlimited doctrinal literature, and the successive wisdom, interpretations, and formulas, and the delusion of having mastered the art of interpretation. These, together with the weakness that issues from them, are to be counteracted by this ninth stage. In the 10th stage there are two delusions: the delusion in regard to great clairvoyance, and the delusion in discerning subtle intentions. These, together with the weakness that issues from them, are what are to be counteracted by this 10th stage. In the Tathagata stage there are two delusions: the delusion of a most subtle attachment to all the knowable realms of meaning, and the delusion of their extremely subtle obstacles. These, together with the weakness that issues from them, are what are to be counteracted by this Tathagata stage. Good son, it is because of these 22 delusions and 11 weaknesses that there are these stages, and that supreme awakening, being encumbered by the delusions and weaknesses, remains absent. The Bodhisattva of Avalokiteshvara addressed the Buddha and said, "World-honored one, supreme awakening is rare indeed, for it is the attainment of great benefit, the great result, whereby all bodhisattvas are enabled to break asunder the net of great delusion, are enabled to pass through the thicket of great weaknesses, and realize supreme awakening." The Bodhisattva of Avalokiteshvara addressed the Buddha and said, "World-honored one, by how many supremacies are these 10 stages established?" The Buddha answered the Bodhisattva of Avalokiteshvara and said, "Good son, in sum there are 8: the purity of high intention, the purity of thought, the purity of compassion, the purity of perfections, the purity of seeing Buddhas and offering them homage, the purity of maturing sentient beings, the purity of birth, and the purity of majesty. Good son, these purities, in sequence, become increasingly superior from the first stage up to the Tathagata stage. Excluding the purity of birth in the Tathagata stage, the good qualities of the first stage are equally present in the higher stages, for you should understand that these stages are superior in good qualities to that first stage. The good qualities of all the 10 bodhisattva stages can be surpassed, but the good qualities of the Tathagata stage are unsurpassed.